Excellency, the ambassador from Egypt to Israel, for your words of wisdom and for being with us here today. We greatly appreciate what you shared with us and the recommendations which you made. And we're glad that our bilateral relations are strong. One last thing I want to say in English, because we have students here from the Rafael Recanati International School, and that is, you see a chairman of the Knesset who is a former immigrant from the former Soviet Union, and this person served prison time as a prisoner of Zion, immigrated to Israel as a lone oleh, and succeeded here. So you 2,000 students in the international school, you can take a lesson from Yuli Edelstein and also learn from him how to behave in a civil way, in civil discourse, and to be a politician on the one hand, but also have derech eretz, okay, on the other hand, which is a rare commodity in this democratic and Jewish country of Israel in the world of politics. It's now my pleasure to introduce Professor Dan Ariely for his talk, The Importance of Trust as a Building Block for Society. Dan Ariely is an Israeli-American professor of psychology and behavioral economics at Duke University. Ariely is the founder of the research institution, the Center for Advanced Hindsight, co-founder of the companies Kaima, B-Works, Timefold, Genie, and Shapa, the chief behavioral economist of Capital, and the chief behavioral officer of Lemonade. Ariely's TED Talks have been viewed over 15 million times. Ariely is the author of the 3 New York Times bestsellers. Ariely was a physics and mathematics major at Tel Aviv University, but transferred to philosophy and psychology. However, in his last year, he dropped philosophy and concentrated solely on psychology. He went where his heart took him. In 1996, he earned a PhD in cognitive psychology from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and completed a second doctorate in business administration at Duke University in 1998 at the urging of Nobel Economic Sciences laureate Daniel Kahneman. Ariely taught at MIT between 1998 and 2008, where he was formerly the Alfred P. Sloan Professor of Behavioral Economics at MIT Sloan School of Management and at the MIT Media Lab. We have a Media Lab here at IDC, which we based on the MIT Media Lab, and hopefully we will continue to be as good as MIT is. In 2008, Ariely returned to Duke University as James B. Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics. In 2015, he became the university professor at Duke. Professor Ariely, I could read your whole CV. It's very, very long. You're an impressive individual. The floor is yours.
Okay, so first of all, thanks for the time and attention. As you could see, you might have noticed that I have half a beard. You might have wondered why. It's not because I promote half beards. Many years ago, I was badly injured. Most of my body is covered with scars, including the right side of my face, so I just don't have hair on this side. This is also why I wear light clothes. Burns don't perspire. Most of my body can't exchange heat, so I hope you'll exclude the attire. I mean, no disrespect. I just get very, very hot inside if I wear other clothes. Okay, enough about facial hair. Let's talk a little bit about trust and the importance of trust. Not too long ago, I was in Peru. I went to a store to buy a pen. There was a glass cage with lots of pens. I pointed to one of them. This was the pen I wanted. And the person behind the counter took a little note and wrote me a note, gave me the note, and pointed to another corner of the store. I went to that corner of the store. I gave somebody the note. They asked me for money. I paid them. It was about $15. He gave me a second note, pointed me to another corner of the store. I go to that other corner of the store, and I get my pen. Now, why do you need 3 people to sell a $15 pen in an empty store? The reason is because the store owner did not trust anybody to hold the money and the pen at the same time. So he created a very complex system that basically builds on lack of trust. And that system ensure that people can't behave, but it's an incredibly expensive system. And what I want to argue today is that a world that has lots of trust has a tremendous amount of benefits that we don't see, and a world in which we lose trust has a lot of cost to everything that we often don't see. And to give you a more experimental example, I'm a research scientist. Think about something called the public's good game. The public's good game. How does this game look like? It's not a real game, it's an experiment that economists play. The way this works is, imagine we have 10 people in Israel. And we choose 10 people at random. They don't know each other. They will never know about each other. And we call them in the morning and we give them 10 shekels. We say, each of you has 10 shekels. And you could do one of those two things with those 10 shekels. You can keep the 10 shekels for yourself, in which case you're 10 shekels richer, or you could put it in a public pool. If you put it in a public pool, the public pot, all the money in the public pool will grow 5 times during the day, and in the evening, equally divided by everybody. And that's the game, and we'll play it day after day after day. What do you think happens when you play this game? Day number 1, you call 10 people, you tell them the story, they each get 10 shekels. All the people are putting their money back into the public pot. 10 people multiplied by 10 shekels, we have 100 shekels. During the day, it multiplies 5 times. We have 500 shekels. In the evening, equally divided by everybody, everybody has 50 shekels. Life is good. You wake up with 10, you go to sleep with 50, everybody is better off. The game goes on for a while, and then one day, one person puts 0 in. Right? You can probably think about who from your friends would be that person. One person puts 0 in. On that day, 9 people put 10 shekels in. We have 90 shekels. Multiplied 5 times, we have 450 shekels. In the evening, equally divided by everybody. Everybody, including the bastard that didn't put money in, right? Because you're part of society, you get whether you contribute or not. Everybody gets 45 shekels. The bastard gets 55 shekels. The bastard has the 10 shekels that they have from the morning, plus what they get from the public good. That person betrayed the public good for their benefit, and they're ahead. Everybody is losing, and they're ahead. But what do you think happens the next day? Either the next day or 2 days down the road, nobody puts anything in. And this game has 2 equilibria. There's an equilibria that everybody participates and everybody benefits. And there's equilibria that nobody participates and nobody benefits. There's nothing in the middle. It's not stable. It's not as if 5 people participating, 5 people not participating is a stable solution. It's either everybody or nobody. The second thing about this game is that the good equilibria is incredibly fragile. If you have 10 people participating and one of them betrays the public good, everything starts deteriorating. If you have 10 people who put nothing, let's say for 3 months, nobody puts money in, nobody puts money in, and then one day 3 people put money in, what do you think happened the next day? It goes back to 100% of the people putting money in? No, goes back to 0. The good equilibria, where we all benefit, is incredibly fragile. The bad equilibria, really stable. And look, the good equilibria is what we want in society. The reality is that we have this tremendous privilege of living in modern society where we could pool our resources and we could build hospitals and roads and we can build schools and all kinds of things together. And if we all participate, we all get to benefit from that. But as some of us starts betraying the public good for our own selfish benefits, the whole system deteriorates. And from this perspective, by the way, one of the roles of the government is to help us keep the good equilibria, right? That we have the temptation. We as people, we get tempted all the time. Every day we wake up and behaving in a way that is selfishly good for us and not good for the long term of society is tempting. And one of the goals of the regulator is to help us keep us in this good way. So that was a starting point to help us think about the importance of trust in society. That's what trust is. It's a public good, and how good a society is when we all trust each other. The next part of it is I want to tell you about the importance of people being trustworthy across different levels of society. So, one of the studies I do is I study dishonesty. I tempt people to steal money from me, and I see when they steal more and when they steal less. One example for an experiment is I give people a die, a regular 6-sided die. We all play with games. And I give people this die, and I say, why don't you toss the die, and I'll pay you whatever the die comes up on. If it will come on 6, I'll give you $6. 5, I'll give you 5. 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. But you can get paid based on the top side of the die or the bottom. Top or bottom, you decide, but don't tell me. So imagine you're in the experiment. I give you a die, and I say, please think top or bottom. You thought top or bottom. You decided. Keep it in your mind. Now toss the die. You toss the die, and let's say it's come with 5 on the bottom and 2 on the top. And now I say, okay, so what did you pick? Now, if you picked bottom, you say bottom, and you get $5. If you pick top, what do? Do you say the truth, top, and get $2, or do you change your mind, say bottom, and get $5? And in the game, people play this 20 times. They think top or bottom, keep it in their mind, roll the die, write on a piece of paper, the die came on 5 and 2, I chose bottom, I deserve 5, and so on. And what do you think we find when people do this task 20 times? We find that people are surprisingly lucky. You know, randomly, you would expect people to guess correctly half the time the high and half the time the low. It turns out people correctly guess about 13 times after 20. By the way, luck is also very kind. It mostly concentrates on the 6-1 die tosses, less so on the 3-4 ones. Anyway, we've done this experiment on almost 50,000 people. We find very few big cheaters. We find a ton of little cheaters. That's the basic story. But in the experiment I want to tell you about today, we invite people to the lab. We invite people to the lab and we say, look, this is the game you're going to play today, but there are 2 versions of this game. And the way they are different from each other is that the translation between points on the die and money is different. It's not 1-to-1. We have one exchange rate, we'll call it the low exchange rate, in which the most you can earn today is $4. And we have another one where the most you can hope to gain today is $40. So the game is the same. It will either be max 4, max of 40. And we ask people to toss a coin. And we say, please toss a coin, and we'll see if you got the $4 version or the $40 version. People toss a coin, and no matter what they toss, we say, oh, sorry, you got the $4 version. But then the experimenter looks around, and he says, psst. He says, psst, listen to me. You got $3 to show up in the experiment. If you will pay me those $3, I will pretend you got the other coin flip. So what is the experimenter asking for? A bribe. Asking for a bribe. What percentage of people do you think bribe him? But just to be clear, these are American university students. How many people here think it's around 10%? Just raise your hand. Around 10%? It's a very low trusting audience. We'll work on this. How many people think it's below 0 and 25? Between 25 and 50? Between 50 and 75? Above 75? Above 85? Okay, 90%, slightly more than 90% bribed him. But just to be clear, I run around the world with suitcases with money and I do experiments. Nobody has ever offered me bribe. But in this experiment, the experimenter said, I am interested in the bribe. The person in charge of the system said, I'm interested in the bribe, and most people bribed him. And then they moved from going to make max $4 to max 40. Do you think they cheated less, more, or the same? How many people think less? People think the same? More? They cheated more. And not only did they cheat more, they started stealing. What do I mean by that? So people, I told you, had a sheet of paper, and they wrote, the die came on 5 and 2, I chose bottom, 6 and 1, I chose top, and so on. And then they have a little formula, and they translate. This is the amount of dot I got, this is the amount of money I got, and they write, let's say, $23 and circle it. At this point, we could pay people. We could say, here's $23. But what do we do instead? We give them an envelope with $50. And we say, here's an envelope with $50. Pay yourself the amount of money you deserve, and the amount of money you didn't earn, leave in the envelope. And as you leave the room, there's a big box, drop it there. So now people have two opportunities to be dishonest. They could say, oh, I really meant top, I really meant bottom, but they can also write $23 and take $24, $25, even $50. In general, we find that people cheat but don't steal. We find that people are extra lucky with the die toss, but if they write $23, they take $23. This experiment I just finished describing to you was the first time we found stealing. We found that people actually wrote $23 and took more. And for me, this is an incredibly disturbing thought. Imagine what happens in an experiment where the person in charge of the experiment is corrupt. In our case, the experimenter said, I'm interested in the bribe. I'm corrupt. How quickly do people change? Turns out incredibly quickly. You need one-time interaction in a corrupt system, and people can change very, very quickly. And of course, you can think about the metaphor to other things in society. It's not just about being in an experiment. There's a question, what happens to system where they are corrupt or don't have justice and so on? So going back to trust, we start by saying how important trust is. Trust is a national resource. It's a national resource, and when somebody betrays the public good, it's not just about them, it's about something much more general. And when somebody runs the experiment, when somebody is at the head of the pyramid, when somebody is in charge of a system, every action that they take to betray the public good, to show that they are less than perfectly honest, has much larger implications for society. So how can we restore trust? What are some things to restore trust? You know, many times what we say is that when celebrities or famous people have a transgression, we say, oh, we'll forgive them for some reason. But if you think about our experiment, it means that people are in a higher level position, we actually need to be more strict with them. We need to have higher standards, not lower standards. Why? Because their effect on society is much larger. I want to end with one last practical advice of how to increase trust. And this is based on a very, very simple experiment. So in this experiment, imagine I'm a waiter. I'm a waiter and I come to a table. There are 4 people in the table. I come to the first person and I say, what would you like for dinner? And the first person says, I want fish. And I say, the fish is not so good today. Take the chicken. The chicken is cheaper and better. Cheaper and better. And then we measure how much the second, third, and fourth person take my advice as a waiter, and we measure how much the whole table takes my advice for wine. And what do you think? Is trust high, medium, low? Trust is very high. Case number 2, I come to the first person, what would you like? And the person says, I want a fish. And I said, the fish is not so good today, like the first waiter. I said, the fish is not so good today, take the steak. It's only 3 times more expensive, but it's amazing. How likely are the second, third, and fourth person to take my advice now? Not at all. Now, what's the difference between the first waiter and the second waiter? The first waiter demonstrated they are willing to make less money for our benefit. Right? The first waiter said, take this, it's cheaper and better. The second waiter, maybe this steak is amazing. Maybe we will dream about this steak for the rest of our life. Maybe it's a good decision. But we can never know whether that person represented themselves or represented us. And the point here is that in order to create trust, we need to be kind of the first waiters. We need to do something that demonstrates that we are willing to lose utility for the other people. And one last lesson. So that's lesson one. One last lesson. My favorite politician ever is Antiochus. Antiochus was the mayor of Bogota. Probably many of you know him. In Bogota, there was a problem that people did not stop at red lights. They would just continue to go. This is the problem, that you have to have collective action. You have to stop everybody at the same time. You can't get 10% of the people to stop. So what did Antiochus do? He hired 200 clowns. He got them to stand in intersections and to stop cars and make fun of them and make the whole thing a bit playful. He stopped all the traffic at the same time. He did it for a couple of weeks. They moved from bad equilibria to a good equilibria, and then the clowns could go away and life was better. In Israel, in the US, in other countries, we are facing a situation with terrible equilibria. The question is, how do we start? And the idea is that we're not going to fix things by small steps, one at a time. There's a slippery slope down, there's not a slippery slope up. And if we want to think about improvements, we have to make dramatic changes. We have to say no more, and we have to move to a better equilibrium. Hopefully we can get the political power as societies around the globe to do that, and thank you for your time.